Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. Latino voters often vote Republican. It's been almost an established fact. They're the pro-life, pro-God party, and as a demographic that is largely very rooted in Catholicism and religion, it's been a pretty safe bet that when it comes to election day, they're voting for the candidate with the R next to their name. Obviously, no demographic votes is a monolith, but on the whole, it's largely been the case that a large percentage of Latino voters vote Republican. And that trend probably reached its peak in the 2024 election when 46% of registered Latino voters voted for Donald Trump, making it the highest percentage of that voting bloc to go for a Republican candidate in American history. And while the majority of the Latino vote still went to the Democratic candidate, but the fact the Latino vote had jumped 13 percentage points since 2020 made Republicans feel pretty confident that that trend was just going to keep going up and that they had secured more and more of that demographic for their side. In 2024, Trump picked up the majority of Latino votes in almost all the battleground states, like Michigan and Pennsylvania, where Kamala got over 20% less than her predecessor Joe Biden had. And Trump performed even more strongly in places like Texas and Florida, where he won a county in Texas that had voted Democratic for 100 years, and Miami-Dade that went red for the first time in 30 years. Due to these strong performances in the 2024 election, Republicans were pretty confident that they were eating up the Democrats' lead with Latino voters, and it would just keep on growing. But it's looking like that patented Republican overconfidence strikes again, because that trend is reversing, and it's got the Republican establishment pretty nervous. Last weekend, in Tarrant County, Texas, a county where Democrats had not won power in over 50 years, and President Trump won by over 17 points back in 2024, a Democrat won. Taylor Remnant beat the conservative candidate by a pretty decisive 14 points. And in a county where 1 in 5 registered voters is of Latino descent, it's safe to say the Latino vote came out for the Democrat. And when you look at it, it's actually not that hard to see why and how it could actually become a national trend amongst this voting bloc. A lot of what attracted Latino voters to Donald Trump in the 2024 election was his promises on the economy. He was going to focus on the economy, make things better for the working class, for the regular folks, the ones that the Democratic Party had abandoned for their coastal elites. But 1 year into his second term, President Trump has done, if anything, the exact opposite. He has made the economy worse and made life for the average person harder and less affordable. So as a result, those voters he courted with his false promises on the economy are turning their back on him and the party as a whole. And as the country as a whole, they witnessed ICE agents murder Renee Good and Alex Preddy and were horrified that the party that they backed was now the party of armed thugs murdering Americans in the streets. And I have to assume some had to wonder if ICE agents had no problem killing 2 white people. They could certainly be next. Texas GOP consultant Brendan Stanheiser was quoted as saying, "The imagery coming out of Minnesota in the last few days has had a huge impact on not only Hispanic voters, but swing voters, independents in Texas, and around the country. What transpired there has definitely led to a bit of political backlash." And yeah, I think I'd have to totally agree. These sorts of feelings absolutely could be magnified on a national level and massively erode any gains amongst the Latino voting populace that the Republicans made in the last few years. Texas Senator Ted Cruz said that he viewed the results of that election as a very concerning outcome, and the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, said it was a wake-up call for Republicans across Texas. They wouldn't talk like that if they felt it was just an isolated incident and not the sign of a larger trend on the horizon, not just in Texas, but across the nation. Or as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis put it, a swing of this magnitude is not something that can be dismissed. But in a lot of ways, this loss of Latino support is a monster of Republicans' own making. Part of what attracted them to the Republican Party was stoking the rhetoric that these new immigrants were so much better treated than you, when they were getting things that should be going to you, so they should support the party that was going to get them out. But instead, the administration turned into a virulently anti-immigrant white supremacist party that treated all immigrants, regardless of their status. All of them had to go to return the nation to its pure white foundations. Understandably, that messaging was an incredible turnoff to Latino voters. It's kind of hard to want to vote for a party that is very clear that they feel the country would be better without you in it. When they see footage of ICE agents rounding up women and children and sending them to detention facilities with abhorrent conditions, that hits particularly hard for them because in large part they are a very family-oriented group. So to see these families being split up, these children being taken away, all under the banner of the Republican administration, with their full and complete support, it's pretty easy to understand why they might want to turn the political party that's making that happen. That's the kind of treatment many of them left their countries of origin to get away from, to come to America where things were supposed to be better, not more of the same. And the thing the Republicans are definitely afraid of is that once they lose this section of the Latino vote, there's not any reason to think they're going to come back. The things that brought them in were exposed as complete fabrications, lies meant to just get their vote, and then abandoned them when it mattered. The Republican Party as a whole would have to be entirely reformed to regain the trust and faith that they lost in those particular voters. And if there's one thing that the Republican Party does not do, it's change. At the same time, while this trend is absolutely a very good sign for Democrats, it's also important they don't do what they always do and get complacent and start feeling like since they're winning, wins are just a guarantee. If anything, Democrats are the party of celebrating just a little too early. Taylor Remmett's win in Texas was a huge upset, that can be doubted. But a lot of his win is thanks to voters liking Taylor Remmett the person and not as much as Taylor Remmett the Democrat. He was the working class guy who attracted voters to him and away from his establishment MAGA Republican opponent. His win showed that victory is possible with Latino voters and in places where previously it was thought impossible for a Democrat to make any sort of electoral success. The Democratic Party is still seen as largely the party of the elites, of the educated, and not fighting for the needs of the working people, the common folk. The fight is not yet decidedly won. Or as Texas Democratic Representative Mark Vasey said when discussing Remmett to win, I don't think the Democrats should think that just because Taylor won last night that it's New York City time. It's not New York City time. It's not Vermont time. It's not LA time. If you're a candidate running in a tough race in a place like Texas, it does not mean you can start California dreaming. And while I might not have gone quite so geographical, I have to completely agree with his statement there. The trend is good, but there's still so much more fight for the Democrats to do. And the last thing they want to do is once again snatch failure from the jaws of success. But if the Republican establishment is expressing concerns, that is a good sign. That means things are trending in the right direction, which I guess in this case is the left direction. While there is no voting demographic that could be called the key to electoral success, it's hard to argue that the Latino vote isn't pretty high up there. Every 4 years, places like Texas and Florida are vital to getting that presidential win. And those two places in particular are hotbeds for the Latino vote. Getting them to vote for you in those states is vital. And while Democrats have often held the big metropolitan cities in those states, they've largely been a sea of red for decades. So seeing more and more of those states go blue is what Democrats want to see. And if things continue the way they are, they just might. I, for one, am casually optimistic. Many of the former self-described Latinos for Trump have expressed how disillusioned they have become with him and how they realized so many of his promises were outright lies. The administration promised that they would keep them safe. Instead, it made them feel less safe than ever before. They said they would bring the economy back on track, and instead they just drove it straight into the ground. The Republican Party has lost a lot of the trust that they gained in the Latino voting bloc, and trust is one of those things that once lost is incredibly hard to regain. And I don't think Republicans can even hope of seeing the sort of Latino turnout they saw in 2024 anytime soon, or maybe even ever again. And it is so often the case, one party's loss is the other party's gain. And when it comes to the Latino vote as a whole, the Republican Party is going to have a pretty bad time in November and probably for the foreseeable future. Now, does that mean with the erosion of Latino support for the Republican Party that the Democrats can hope to see a blue Texas and a blue Florida in their future? I don't know if we can go that far, but small successes become big successes, and one day maybe they truly will realize that dream. It certainly seemed impossible in the past, but if this trend continues with the Latino voters, it may not be quite so impossible. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time when I cut you off another slice of news. And don't forget to rate and review this show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you find this show.